Previously on Slay, Lincoln got himself into a whole heapin' helpin' of trouble. He started a fight at Stoolie's bar, got his ass whooped, sucker punched, finished the job Johnson, which got Lincoln's ass thrown into a gutter where Basil Beverly, second in command of the Bastion, and his socius Rochelle Kolar tried to bring Lincoln in for questioning regarding the kidnapping of Delilah Droman. Billy, riding Dragon, who was meshed up to look like a badass chopper, arrived on the scene before Basil and Rochelle could drag Lincoln away. Now Billy and Dragon face off against Basil, a rixator, and Rochelle, a meshworking adjurator. Can Billy protect his friend? Find out now on Slay, episode 62. Billy watched the woman rise into the air, hover about 5 feet off the ground, her hands out and crackling with white light, her form-fitting burgundy armor etched with runes that glowed a pearly hue. Her burgundy hood mostly covered her eyes gleaming with that same white light, but he could make out spiky blonde hair beneath. Billy saw her overlay as well, a punk rock girl with torn fishnets, a studded belt, and a ripped Green Day halter top tee. What was her loom? The sun? The moon? Neon light? The bald man wore dark gray rixator armor, closer to black than Lincoln's. He reached into his cloak and drew forth a thick, shortish sword with a ball at the hilt's end. Billy recognized the weapon from movies about the Roman Empire, a gladius. His overlay was a gray three-piece suit and a dark overcoat. He didn't have a dark mist mask like Link's. Was the man not using it, or was that unique to Lincoln? At the sight of the woman floating and the rixator drawing the sword, Dragon slow curled in front of Billy, rose up higher and hissed, a noise that made Billy's stomach churn. That was not the sound of a happy little pup chasing a stuffed animal. "You fool," the man said in a deep-voiced, cultured English accent. Your familiar is unshrouded. Do you wish to bring upon us the wrath of the Jerboas?" The word shocked Billy, brought forth the memory of the knife-toothed shadow monsters tearing Big Hack to pieces. The woman turned in place, levitating like something out of a horror movie, an invisible wind ripping at her burgundy hood. She made circles in the air with her hands. A glowing, moon-white gel seemed to spread across the alley entrance, sealing it before turning transparent. "I've blocked sight from the street." Her accent was also English, but snottier, like something out of a Guy Ritchie movie. She turned to face Billy, her glowing eyes glaring down at him from under her hood's hem. "You're not only a charlatan, you're an amateur." Billy could see filament coursing from her hands, like white iron filings vibrating within a magnetic field. He knew, somehow, that most enlightened couldn't see what he saw. He was perpetually half in the underskin, half in the real world. "If Jerboas come," Link said, "it's on you, Basil, not Walt. Get your limey ass out of here, and there won't be any Jerboas." Lincoln, in the damn gutter, bound up with glowing rope, a cockroach crawling along his shoulder armor. Dragon hissed anew, her body shuddering with promises of malice. A pause. 4 people and 1 Chinese dragon in an alley, a Mexican standoff of sorts, no one knowing exactly what to do next. Billy wasn't angry. He was scared. Anger brought forth his innate heat. Should he try to summon it, show these people he was more of a threat than they thought? Should he grab the shotgun Magda gave him and try and stun them? Inside Billy's cloak, Magda's cloak, something buzzed. Billy said. You mind if I take this call? I got one of them sphere thingies in this cloak. They're blue. You seen them? No? You ain't seen them? Well, I got one, and it's buzzing, which means someone is trying to call me. Now, I know, it's super annoying when people say, I gotta take this call. Like you're at lunch with some Hollywood douchebag who sneaks off to the bathroom to do a line of blow because his influencer girlfriend just got caught in a four-way with 2 Chippendales and Melissa McCarthy. And it's on TMZ, and he's gotta do damage control. But let me explain. See, this call is probably related to my man down here that you got all hog-tied up on wet concrete, which, I might add, is pretty damn rude, I guess probably because of the way you was raised, but I don't judge, I just observe. What I mean to say is, this call could really be important and germane to the situation at hand. And now I know germane ain't a common word, but I got a big vocabulary on account— Stop, the rixator said. Please, stop. I'm out of breath just listening to you. Answer your call. Partner, if anything comes out of that cloak that is not a sphere, take out his eye. The woman with the blazing white eyes rubbed her fingers and thumb together. What looked an awful lot like a throwing knife made of lightning appeared in her hand. The sphere continued to buzz. Billy said. I'm gonna go slow, 'cause I like my eye. Both of them, actually. Stereoscopic vision. Very important in evolution. Without it, answer the call, charlatan, the rixator said. Billy slowly reached into his cloak, brought forth the blue sphere. As soon as it was clear of the endless folds, Ariella's face appeared inside of it. She looked down at Lincoln, bound up with glowing white rope, at Billy, up at Dragon, which made her brow crease with immediate concern, and then at the rixator and the floating woman. My name is Ariella Goldsmith. Identify yourselves. You are harassing my client. I demand you release him this instant. The bald man appeared unfazed. I assume that you are a lawyer. He slid his gladius back into his cloak. I do not have to identify myself to the likes of you. This isn't some terrestrial courtroom, barrister. The Bastion's ascendancy takes dominance here. The rixator's tone and dismissive gaze made it clear he thought himself infinitely superior to everyone here except, perhaps, the floating blonde meshworker. The Bastion's ascendancy is subject to Codicil 7, Section 12 of Commonality Law, Ariella said. I happen to be a registered practitioner in Cordis. I can cite the subsections you are currently violating, or you can save us all time by simply releasing my client and then fucking all the way off. She wasn't messing around. Billy did not like her being bossy to him, but when she did it to other people, kind of awesome. I don't care what you think you know, Basil said. I am Basil Beverly, Clauster Secundo of the Bastion, and I am taking Lincoln Franks in for subsection 12, paragraph 3, Ariella said, cutting him off. An enforcing emissary of the Bastion, or former enforcing emissary of the Bastion, which my client is, may not be detained without written approval from the Claustator. As you just pointed out, Basil, you are the Clauster Secundo. Do I need to conjure up a grammar guide to show you that Secundo means you are not the Claustator? Basil opened his mouth to speak, closed it. Do you have written consent? Ariel asked. From the dark expression clouding Basil's face, Billy could see that he did not. Let's move on to punishment, Ariella said. Someone castigating, detaining, or abusing a former Bastion enforcement emissary without written authorization from the Claustator is subject to review from the Villicus Council, who may judge said actions to be beyond the Bastion's writ. Seeing as you're not yet the Claustator, do you think that might cause a revote? Basil turned a shade of red. Billy knelt next to Lincoln. Man, what the fuck is Ariella talking about? Basil's next in line to run the Bastion, Lincoln said, loud enough for Basil and the woman to hear. A villicus is like a high-level manager for the Bastion. If Basil's actions come up for review from the Villicus Council, they can vote him out as next in line. He'll miss his chance to run the show when the Clostator steps down. Basil's furious gaze flicked to Lincoln, then back to Ariella. Well, Ariella shrugged her shoulders. What's it gonna be, Basil? She extended her pinky and thumb, mimed talking on a phone. Hello? Villicus Council? I'd like to report an extraordinary abuse of power. From who? Oh, well, that's the best part. The abuser is none other than your Clostator. Fine, Basil snapped. Gods above and below, do I hate lawyers. My socius and I will leave now on the condition that this stays between us. Agreed? Ariella mimed hanging up the phone. Had she ever actually used one of those antique phones that had a cord and a cradle? She didn't look that old. Agreed, she said. Lincoln, twisted in his spot on the ground, raised his head. Yeah, he said. Take that, Basil, and don't let the alley door hit you on the ass on the way out. Did Link think that was a funny line? It was so hard to tell with him, because he simply wasn't funny. The woman dropped down next to Basil. This alley has no door, she said. Rochelle, never mind, Basil said. Clear the entrance. Let's go. If someone sees the unshielded familiar and Jerboas come, that is not our responsibility. Rochelle waved her hands again. Billy saw the alley shell turn white, then pop into a cloud of nothingness. The two armored people walked away. Hey, Lincoln said as they turned the corner. What about my hands? The glowing white cord around his wrists also popped into nothingness. Kid, Lincoln said, tell Dragon to chill. Do it quick. Billy realized how disturbing it might be for a passerby to see the huge, black, hissing coil of anger. Dragon, buddy girl, sit, Billy said. It's okay, sit. The hissing stopped. Dragon curled into a smaller coil, seemed to blend with the shadows. As big as she was, anyone walking past the alley entrance wouldn't see her at all. Help me up, Link said. I gotta get back to Magda so she can do her thing. Billy gripped Link's arms, pulled him to his feet. Someone had really done a number on him. Link was a bad motherfucker, though. Maybe he got jumped. Must have got jumped. I got you, Billy said. Dragon, buddy girl, let's ride. Dragon faced the alley entrance and laid flat. She seemed to compress some, shifting from 15 feet long to perhaps 8. A shimmer, a gleam, the sound of 100 paper bags being torn at once, and Dragon was once again a kick-ass, high-handlebarred chopper. Billy helped Lincoln swing a leg over and sit on the pillion seat. That lady with the burgundy armor, Billy said. She's an adjurator? Lincoln grunted in pain as he settled in. Yeah, that's Rochelle. She's a peach. So she's a meshworker. Billy got on in front of Lincoln, felt and heard Dragon's happy purr. Where did she learn? At the Bastion? Could I learn there? Afraid not, Lincoln said. The Juroguma almost destroyed the Bastion back in the day, so adjurators and monks built meshwork blocks right into the stones themselves. No magic can go down at the Bastion. Adjurator training happens at the Mashrika. It's in the patchwork. And no, you can't train there either unless you want to give up the next 20 years of your life. Can we go now? Yeah, Billy said. You're all beat up and I don't want you to fall. Hold on to me tight. Not in this lifetime, Lincoln said. Dragon, give me some grab handles. Billy turned in place, looked back just as two chrome handles extended from the rear seat. Lincoln grabbed hold of them. Shitbird swooped into the alley, landed, snatched up a cockroach, and gobbled it down. Was it Billy's imagination, or had the roach glowed slightly with a purple sheen? You're fucking blind! You're fucking blind! Shitbird said. Bitch better have my crackers! Shitbird flapped his wings, his gorgeous wings, so long and supple, and flew up from the coffee and beer-smelling pavement. Imbued bugs were delicious. How had Billy not seen it? How had Billy and Lincoln not seen it? The roach glowed, and it was dark out. One on your shoulder, one on your shoulder, Shitbird said. You're fucking blind! You're fucking blind! Lincoln tried to twist to look, yelped in pain, and clutched at his ribs. Humans were so stupid. Billy, who was also stupid but less stupid than most humans, and way less stupid than Lincoln, got off the dog and peered close at Lincoln's shoulder. There's a roach on you, Billy said. Shitbird is right. It's glowing. Billy pinched the glowing roach between finger and thumb, held it where Lincoln could see it. Lincoln took it, squinted at it. Well, I'll be. That's how Teddy knew I was here. Gotta be one of Haimana's little friends. To Shitbird, the roach glowed like a blazing purple streetlight. Billy saw it too, but maybe not as brightly. Lincoln barely saw it at all. Teddy knew you were here? Billy asked. Did Haimana have those bugs follow you or something? Are Magda and Ariel in danger? Lincoln shook his head. No, they're fine. I bet Haimana put bugs at various points of interest, places they'd heard I'd been before. A bunch of people seen me at Stoolie's. Word got back to Teddy about that, maybe. He doesn't know about our place. Thanks to Shitbird, he won't find out. Finally, some proper praise. Recognition of Shitbird's talent that was long overdue. Could these stupid humans not simply see how magnificent he was? The most magnificent of all the crows, who were already the most magnificent of all the birds. Billy squinted at the glowing, yummy treat. Could meshed up insects like this have been at the mansion? Is that how Teddy knew when Droman was gone? Knew when to attack? Lincoln nodded. Probably. I'll have Ariella call Droman when we get home. Could be more of them at the mansion still. He held the roach up above his head. Shitbird! Another snack? Shitbird did not have to be asked twice. He swooped in, plucked the roach from Lincoln's fingers in midair, then settled on the edge of the dumpster to gulp it down. Tasted like cockroach, only more cockroach than most. Maybe there was a nice bit of rancid meat in the dumpster to make it a full meal. Maybe a couple of cigarette butts for dessert. Let's go, Lincoln said. Magda's got to do some work on me. Hey, Shitty, I think I got some 6-month-old Funyuns stashed away in my room. They're all yours, pal. Stale Funyuns? No way. Billy faced forward, looked out the alley. Dragon, he said, take us home. Antoni Petrowski stood in front of his 8th grade class. The other kids laughed at him. They laughed and they pointed. "Antoni likes boys," they chanted in unison, their laughter breaking up their words, making the chorus crackle with insulting static. "Antoni kisses boys." A tiny wet spot formed on the crotch of Antoni's jeans. He cried. He tried to hold the tears back, but he couldn't. Delilah Droman cried, too. The class broke into a sing-song chant. "Antoni the phony likes boys! Antoni the phony likes boys!" Giant insects, gross old kidnappers, and evil bug witches weren't the only kind of monster out there. Sometimes, monsters were other people. Sometimes, the monster was cruelty. "Antoni the phony likes boys! Antoni the phony likes boys!" In just one dream session, Delilah already knew enough about Antoni to sculpt his nightmares. It was simple. It disturbed her deeply to know how simple it was. She could do it to Gabby, to Antoni, to any of the captive kids. "Measure the purity of the filament," Teddy said. Delilah almost said how, but she already knew how. Kind of. By purity, Teddy meant intensity. She thought back to when she had fallen off the mansion's roof. She had been 8 years old. Haimana had been gone for 2 years at that point. Daddy had told Delilah not to be up there, but try telling a Droman, any Droman, what to do. 3-story fall. She'd been lucky she hadn't landed on her head. She'd come out of it with a broken leg. Morgan Stone, who had replaced Haimana as Daddy's assistant, had asked Delilah how much pain she was in on a scale of 1 to 10, with 0 representing no pain at all, and 10 representing so much pain she couldn't think. Delilah had said 6. That had been a lie, of course, because the pain was an easy 8, bordering on a 9. But Daddy did not like weakness, and Delilah knew better than to disappoint the oh-so-important Kellius Droman. Nightmare intensity was like the pain scale, Delilah figured. A 0 was no pain at all. A 10 was the kind of fear that someone would carry with them for a long time. Perhaps forever, even when they woke. "I'll show you how to make the tuning trident," Teddy said. "It's simple. You just think of it like a tuning fork, but responding to, 'I don't need it. Be quiet. I need to think.'" The words were out before she'd considered them, considered her tone. She expected Teddy to react harshly, maybe even hit her. If he could do that while in someone else's dream, she didn't know, but he stood there and said nothing. Teddy imagined a tuning fork because he fancied himself some kind of musician or something. The long hair, the necklaces, the leather pants, the bracelets. Maybe he had been a rock and roll guy way back when. Teddy made his measurement device something he identified with. Delilah would do the same, but she wasn't a musician. She concentrated, envisioned what she needed. She raised her hand. Her cell phone appeared. It wasn't a real cell phone. It was a conjuration. Making it had been easy. The phone was just her imagination, moved into dream space, where many things were possible. "I guess it's true what they say about you millennials," Teddy said. "Can't keep you off your stupid phones." Millennials? Teddy was 2 whole generations off. Millennials were in their 30s. Gen Z was in their late teens. Delilah considered herself part of Gen Alpha. "We like our phones," she said. Unlike people, phones never let us down. She tapped the screen, called up an app called Dream Check. She tapped the screen, called up an app labeled Dream Check. She'd imagined the app, too, riffing off the analytical energy she'd picked up on from Teddy's tuning trident. 2 vertical meters appeared on the screen. The first showed fear, 72%. The second, humiliation, 84%. Antoni's name ran across the bottom of the screen. There were 3 other icons below as well, showing anguish, anxiety, and guilt. The percentages weren't high enough to matter. Teddy looked down over Delilah's shoulder. Not pure enough, he said. You gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers. Humiliation is a good filament, but we don't get as much for the... Humiliation is a good filament. We don't get as much of that. Not as valuable as fear, but humiliation does bring in a nice price. I need more of both. Delilah felt awful for Antony. He was gay and he hated himself for it. He couldn't just like what he liked, couldn't just wonder how romance and love and sex worked, like she'd wondered, or at least had been wondering, before Teddy's first attack and Daddy's subsequent lockdown kept her away from everyone her age, boys and girls alike. She wondered how Antony's parents treated him. Before he'd been kidnapped, did they even know who he was? Time is money, Teddy said. Make it happen. Delilah felt like her soul was rotting, blackening. She had to do something. If she didn't produce, she'd wind up with a gaunt on her face, and then she couldn't help Antony, couldn't help any of the kids. She didn't know how to help them yet. She needed time. And the only way to buy more of it was to keep her job as foreman. It sickened her, but she would do what she had to do. She slid into Antony's horrible nightmare. It was simple to do, so simple. And she made that nightmare worse. Antony's wet spot Sorry, way to edit we missed, so I'll just continue with what I have right here. And I'll punch it in later. Antony's wet spot expanded, became a dark splotch that slowly crept down his pants leg. The cruel kids pointed at the pee streak. They laughed. They howled. Antony hung his head and started to cry. That's cold, Teddy said. He didn't hide the delight in his voice. He liked to see kids suffer. I'm impressed, and I don't impress easy. How's the numbers? Delilah looked at her phone. Fear, 84%. Humiliation, 99%. Rock on, Teddy said. That's some good filament. Grade A. If this little Pollock ever gets out of here, I'll leave that dream in his memories. The rich little shit can carry the shame forever. If he gets out of here? So there was a way? Delilah knew she couldn't lose hope. Are you going to ransom him? Teddy huffed. His mother couldn't afford what I'd ask. He might burn out, though. Get too cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Filament from crazies isn't any good. It happens sometimes. Some go nutsoid and their filament is worthless. Some just get too old and their dream intensity drops off. When a line worker can't produce, I let them go. She must have made some kind of expression because Teddy's eyes narrowed in warning. Don't get any ideas, he said. There's only 4 ways out of here. Ransom, insanity, death, or old age. Happens when workers are 18 or so. How old are you? He knew how old she was. He wanted to hear her say it. I'm 13. If she lost her foreman position and went on the line, the best she could hope for was 5 years of constant, soul-crushing nightmares. Delilah looked away, unable to hold the gaze of this monster any longer. The class continued to laugh, continued to howl. The teacher, who hadn't been there a moment before, joined in, slapping his knee and almost passing out from lack of breath. Poor Antony sobbed harder. His nightmare had been bad enough before Delilah pushed it over the top. You said if Antony did get out, you'd leave his nightmare in his head. What does that mean? Teddy reached behind him, seemed to pull the back of the classroom aside as if it was a stage curtain. Delilah stepped through. Teddy followed. Just like that, they were out of Antony's dreams and back into his cold dungeon cell. Delilah was grateful for the yukata Haimana had given her. Delilah didn't want to feel gratitude toward the bug witch for anything, but she felt gratitude for the outfit's warmth. The bloated dream gaunt and Antony's face quivered in delight. When I said don't get any ideas, I meant it, Teddy said. When any worker leaves, for any reason, I'm the last one they see. I use the dream gaunt to wipe their memories. Of me, of Haimana and Agnetha, of this place. No clues. If I ever sell you off, I'll do the same to you. Then why leave the nightmare memories? Delilah asked. If you could remove them, why leave them? Teddy's smile was a thing filled with sickness, more frightening even than Gabby's emerald spider. Because true art deserves to live on, he said. No matter what they do, no matter where they go, no matter how rich they get to be, what I did to them will always be on their minds, and they won't even know it was my doing. Compared to talking to this psychopath, doing his bidding maybe Compared to talking to this psychopath and doing his bidding for perhaps 5 years, Compared to talking to this psychopath and doing his bidding, maybe 5 years of nightmares would be the lesser of the two evils. But if Delilah gave up, she couldn't help Antony, Gabby, or any of the others. There was a way to help them, a way to get them out. Delilah would find it. On to the next, Teddy said. Amika Kasaba is big for his age, but he's only 10. Has nightmares about being eaten alive by ants. I've only got 89% out of him so far. With your natural talent, Foreman, I bet we hit 95%. If you get over that, you won't have to eat burgers and fries tonight. I'll get you a pizza. Burgers, fries, pizza. Delilah knew no matter what it was, it would taste like ash. She wanted to go home. She wanted Lincoln to come and save her. Until he did, though, she had to stay in Teddy's good graces. She had to. Okay, boss, she said. Let's get to work. Too many rough voices. That was episode 62 of Slay, titled Roach Clip. Really weird thing Rob and I had put in a couple of fixes on that last chapter, a couple of edits, and they are not there. And I just exported everything today. So that's the magic of writing on a computer. All right, ladies and gents. I got flustered before the damn show started. So forgot to tell you what we're talking about today. We are about to begin a chat on the influence of Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games on my writing career, and if that is something usable or helpful for other people working on their own creative storytelling careers. And we'll have yet another update on the Slay audiobook. Sounds like my significant other downstairs is on a call. So I'm going to go through the chat room right now. We'll see what we got. And we won't actually start the recording of Deep Cuts. No, I got the gas. If you have not heard the podcast that dropped in your feed on yesterday, we have a new podcast called Deep Cuts. And that is the recording of the talkie talk we do after the live read. We're getting a good number of people watching this show, but a lot of people watch after the fact. And a lot of junkies, they want to wait to binge all of Slay all at once. You know, more power to them if that's how they want to enjoy their entertainment. So we're taking these talkie talk sections, cutting them out, dropping them into the feed, and that is called Deep Cuts. Since the name of this is Scott Sigler Slices, let's go to main. Oops. Since the name of this show is Scott Sigler Slices, this Slices Live. Name of the podcast, Scott Sigler Slices. This is Scott Sigler Slices Live. Deep Cuts is a representation of other parts. They're bonus episodes. I'm rambling on, but you know what? I'm vamping. I got to fill some air. Okay. Yeah, I'm a prize today. Throat's all scratchy. The document wasn't correctly exported. I got a runny nose. I'm burping. You must love me to get all this steaming right into your stream. Hey, baby.
Hey.
All right. Let me help my girl out here.
You do that.
There you are, sweetness. Hold on one second, guys. We get squared away. All right. Oh, yeah. Cool it off. You got to cool it down. You better slow it down. Ooh, watch out. You're gonna lose control. Bobby and Ricky and Mike, if I love the girl, who cares who you like? Oh, that's what. Everything women about was you and mine in my life. I remember some of the lyrics. Got your headphones, baby? Oh, gosh, darn it. Let me get those. You got them?
Yeah.
Can you want me to do that?
Yeah.
Yep, thought so. All right, switch seats to me. Just introduce yourselves to the audience. Your boy is not properly prepared today.
I love that he said introduce yourselves as if I'm multi-personality, which is not necessarily incorrect. I'm not going to lie. But I can't crawl under the desk because I have a bum knee. Oh. There we go. There we go. That's probably plenty. You can stop.
Okay.
You got to turn off that fan when we start the deep cuts.
Got it. All right, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, look who's in the house. You know why? Because A and I, we live that sitcom life. Sitcom life, y'all. Let me tighten this up, baby. We talked about this. Get this set where you want it.
Here we go.
There you are. Stretch it out a little bit. Oh, yeah. Here we go. And, all right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go.
I don't have headphones and I don't have a microphone.
Yeah, that's because you don't have headphones. Try now.
I do, and it's very loud. That schmoozy.
We'll get that. We'll cut that off in a second. We just got to cool it down.
Lord sakes, you guys. There's so many things going on. As you already know, because I talk about it incessantly, because I hate it. I'm on my HOA, and today there was a water main break, and I don't know what to do about that. Scott was the one who found it, and he called me, and he said, "Who do I have to call about this?" And I was like, "You have to call me about it."
Gotta call my girl about it. All right.
Anyway.
All right, so we're going to do quick housekeeping, and let's see. A couple of things to go, and then we're going to start the discussion, and we'll set the recording going and do all of that stuff.
Can I have more headphones?
Yes, you can, doll. How's that, better?
Better, much better. Thank you.
First of all, coming up on June 1st is the monthly Junkie Party. Yeah. You can go to bit.ly/Junkies Party. The link will be there. And Steve the Iceberg Rickyberg hosts a 7-hour marathon of junkies calling in, zooming in from all over the world to hang out, chit-chat with each other, chit-chat about anything. Of course, mostly chit-chat about me, I think.
I mean, that's not really.
Really. That's as one should. You know, you can't. It's just the way. It's just the way things go. And then, if you have not subscribed to our
I agree with you. I was kind of press ganged into joining. I am totally in agreement with you, Matt.
Okay. Remember, if you whisper, lean in. Text to 855-955-509. 509. I thought you were pointing to one of the apps down there. I'm like, why do you want me to call it the bass guitar?
But I think it's tipped all the way down.
Yes. Do you need more?
Nope. I was just trying to give us. We have a lot of headroom,
yes,
even though I have such a giant forehead. It seems like we have a lot of headroom. That's a little bit better. Not that you see anything but our microphones.
Basically the same. I don't know what. Well, Trent, we'll worry about that. We got a couple things we got to fix.
Yeah.
Anyways, text this number, text to this number, and that is going to get you on our SMS. And we send out texts letting you know when we have live streams, new products, etc., things like that. And then, of course, where's the newsletter? Boom, boom. And if you also want to get the information this way, scottsigler.com/newsletter. We just sent out a newsletter just to let people know about Deep Cut's first episode dropping yesterday. Yeah. So if you are on the email list, you should have got it. If you want to be in the email list, scottsigler.com/newsletter. Sign up there. Here's what's coming up. Turn that off. We have, let's see. I left one out. Sunday, May 26th, Slay episode 61, Follow the Pain, went live in the feed. We will be hearing the episode you just listened to, which is Roach Clip, will be coming up this Sunday. Wednesday, June 5th, Slices will be live reading Slay episode 63, titled Ransom. Yeah.
No, it's in. Oh, the live read. Yes, sorry.
The live read will be Ransom. And then starting tomorrow through June 2nd, I am at StokerCon in San Diego. And I am currently working on the Crypt Book 2's first draft. Halfway through it.
I will say I will not be at StokerCon. I am actually on a girls' weekend this weekend, so I will also not be at the Junkie Party, and I will not be at StokerCon. I love you all, but I did not know all this was happening at the same time when I booked all this. And Ross, I played my first D&D campaign ever in my entire life in 2020. One of my friend's 14-year-old sons wanted to play, well, at the time, 13-year-old sons wanted to play D&D, and I got to join, and it was super fun. Hopefully I will find a link to, if I can find, there used to be a way to kind of do a Twitter thread story, and I couldn't find it this week, but Scott actually live tweeted my first ever D&D episode, or D&D campaign night, when I rolled 2 natural 20s, and I was like, okay, so what do I do now? And he was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Is that good? I asked.
I just rolled a 20. Is that good?
Is that good? Because it was my first time. and he live tweeted it. So I'll find some of those tweets and add them to the deep cuts that we talk, the episode that we post. Comes out on Wednesdays?
Tuesdays.
So
yeah, Tuesdays.
Not this next Tuesday. I'll find some of those and you can follow that. But I do hope to join a new virtual campaign soon as well.
And a couple things before we begin our recording, and I got sent a nice sticker from the Ponds, in-house graphic designer Scott Pond. Little alien sticker.
Baby alien.
Put that on a bass guitar probably. And this shirt, we got this to support my awesome nieces. What?
So Rob Otto said, could that be more orange? And I think it's more creamsicle and a little less safety orange.
It's creamsicle.
But
Rob,
it's to support Riley's lacrosse team, and it says Sigler on the back, so that's kind of fun.
Lacrosse team at Wheaton College. Is that correct? Is it Wheaton College? That is wild. That is some wild stuff.
So before you do the intro, you need to turn off that fan.
Turn off that fan.
Hey, Michael Deschamps. Nice to see you.
Okay, you ready to roll, babe?
I am.
And
or nice to see you, too.
Off, before we record, do you have that question I gave you to ask?
I do.
Okay. Let's get into it. Hold on. Let me call this up. Oh, I have to call nothing up. I forget. We just hit record. Start recording. Hello and welcome to Deep Cuts, the bonus episodes of Scott Sigler Slices, hence the clever name Deep Cuts. Today's topic, we're going to talk about the influence Dungeons and Dragons has had on my storytelling career, Dungeons and Dragons role-playing games in general. talk about if it's still any of that influence is carried through my career, and we're probably going to talk too about whether that might be a beneficial thing to people who are getting into the storytelling creative field. With me is my co-host and my favorite person in all the world, a real girl herself. How you doing, A?
I'm great. How are you guys? I guess you guys can't tell me except in the chat room, but I'm doing really well. I'm about to go see some of my other favorite people in the world. Tomorrow I leave on a 4-day weekend with my girlfriends, and that's great.
Yeah. So we're going to get into this topic right now. This show works because we get the topic from the chat room. Last week, we got the topic they want to hear about tonight. So if you guys, while you're listening to this in the chat room, if you think about something we should focus on next week, save that, write that down, set it aside. We'll get that at the end of the show. For those of you listening at home, we record this live with a chat room full of junkies. You can join us any Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We do a live stream with a live fiction read at facebook.com/ScottSigler, twitch.tv/ScottSigler, youtube.com/ScottSigler. Let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
Before we do that, I want to mention, if you don't normally join the live stream because you don't want to hear the live story, you want to consume it all at once it's an audiobook or an ebook or something, they're roughly about 35 minutes into the episode is story content, and then we switch to deep cuts. So kind of pop in and see if the deep cuts is started around halfway through the episode.
Okay, first question we've got from the chat room is I just saw from Sean Dyer. Sean Dyer asks, which edition do you most identify with and why? We'll get into the storytelling aspects in a minute, but I believe the big one that we played back in the day, Rob and Dan Baker, Rob Otto, my co-writer for Slay, and Dan Baker are in the chat room with us, and they were part of my role-playing group back in the day. I believe we did AD&D first edition and AD&D second edition. Second edition came out in 1999, so it's probably first edition, those first super, super sweet hardcovers, but guys, correct me in there. So of course that is what I identify with because of the countless hours we put in playing those versions. And we'll try and keep track of the questions in the chat room here. Another one here's one from Ross the Boss. Are you a player or a DM at heart?
Ooh, that's a great question.
This dovetails nicely into the topic at hand, which is how did D&D form my storytelling style, skills, tendencies, etc. And without a doubt, I really preferred being the DM. Always preferred being the DM. And what that did to formulate my storytelling style was I got to write detailed plots, detailed characters, and then as if it was a live theater production watching the audience, I got to watch the real-time reaction from the players in my group.
Yeah.
And it was a years-long boot camp that showed me certain devices, certain techniques, certain emotions could elicit particular responses from people. And that was great. That was great. But the biggest thing I think that taught me was how to slow play tension. It taught me pacing. It taught me foreshadowing because you can drop little breadcrumbs along the way, and sometimes the players got them and sometimes they didn't. So the thing you thought was the most obvious tell in the world, like I am telling you there is a chromatic dragon a town down and you're going to run into it. And they would completely miss it. And then he would drop some offhand thing like, hey, there's a big old turd in that field. Like, oh, there's an orc around here. And they would be spot on. So getting to know specifically what would produce the audience understanding what was coming, what would retroactively have the audience say, holy crap, you totally told us that was coming. We didn't see it coming. And they get that level of delight. And then also the delight of not knowing at all. What's up?
No, it's not off. But why is that? Oh, I see. Never mind. So it's interesting because, as I mentioned, I played my very first campaign in 2020, and we had a dungeon master who was not Scott, and I was playing with a 13-year-old boy, and we went to a county fair, and my companion, I was a hill dwarf and a wizard, and my companion was the 13-year-old, and the dungeon master was his dad, and his dad made this beautiful, every single thing in that fair was fun, But he was also 13, so he did two things. He used the claw machine, which was actually an animal, and he did a pie eating contest, and literally everything was full of joy and funny. And then he was like, "Yeah, I'm good to go." And I didn't know anything, so I was like, all right, let's go. And the dungeon master was like, are you sure you don't want to play, maybe ride some rides, play some of the other games? Because he had worked so hard, so hard, and he knew his son so well. And so that's a question I have for you.
Okay.
As this commutes to your writing career, are there things that you hope people sort of clue into that let you expand? And let you drive that. And the reason I'm asking is a little spoiler alert. There are several instances in your career where you thought someone was a throwaway character and they became a main character because that's what people clued into. So I'm asking the opposite. Are there things that you thought people would love and clue into that you just had to put down?
Yeah. See if you can scooch a little closer, move that mic with you while we're at it. Well, the big factor there is open world writing versus closed world writing, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
So in an open world setting, like in a D&D setting, you try and populate all of these things so that you can enable the players to discover for themselves and choose the path that you have already carefully laid for them. And sometimes the characters completely whiff and they miss it, and you have to come up with convoluted ways to bring them back into this wonderful plot and wonderful characters and settings that you work so hard on. A novel, on the other hand, is it's an alley. It's a closed shoot dead end alley. They're going to progress down that alley the way you want them to. So those two things don't really apply at all. As far as discovery of characters and interesting settings, though, that absolutely happens. It happens in role playing, and it happens in fiction, where this throwaway character, you didn't plan on them being anything, and the audience goes nuts for that character. It happened a lot in D&D, where you would come up with a character, and of course, Rob and Dan and I all made up voices for all the stuff we were role-playing, and you'd just do a new character and throw out a voice, and all of a sudden, something about either the setup of the character or the acting and the presentation, all of the players would grab onto it and be convinced this was the important thing they absolutely had to figure out. And it's the opposite of when you played, with the kid not sticking around for the fair. They'd be like, okay, listen, let's ask the kobold. Let's just really ask the kobold, like, what's the kobold's mom's all about? Yeah, and ask about the dad too. Are they divorced? Are they divorced parents? And you're like, it's a kobold selling cabbage. I really don't think it matters. And they would just keep drilling down, and finally, like, half the role-playing session is gone. You're like, I have worked a very long time on this. Can we please move to the goddamn gate of the castle and not stay outside buying cabbage? Fuck's sake.
I love that. So on YouTube, D79 asks, as a sci-fi writer, did you ever play in a sci-fi setting? And if so, how did it influence you?
We played Star Frontiers. I don't know if that one's still around. And Space Hero from Hero Games. I think we played a couple rounds of both of them. They never really appealed to me all that much. And I played the Star Trek role-playing game as well, where like the objective was to move forward in your rank. They were all fun, but none of that stuff really held me. What held me was Champions, the superhero role-playing game, and Dungeons and Dragons. I don't really know why, but we played Danger International, which was like a James Bond kind of spy thriller role-playing game, and several others. But the sci-fi stuff was fun, and I enjoyed it, but it never really held the interest of D&D and Champions.
Yeah, so speaking of Champions, there's another question, which is in addition to D&D's impact on storytelling style for you, D&D versus Champions, was it the same or different impacts? And that's from Dan Baker.
Well, that's a good question. Was D&D or Champions, were either of them more impactful upon my storytelling style? I think Champions probably had more of a lasting influence, but it's a really, really subtle difference. In D&D, it's more wide open. Anything is possible. You can bring in magic at the last drop of a second. Hey, a Lich King shows up, and now you guys are really screwed. And I can force the hand of the players in different ways in D&D. Champions which is based on comic books and graphic novels, has a more confined storytelling style where you really have to craft it in a way that the character is going to choose to go down this much narrower set of paths. So without the completely open-ended magic, it was a little bit harder to have to craft things. So I think Champions led to my style, which is very confined magic systems when they are there at all. Hard science, actual physics, rules that channel people through a story is more similar to that one.
And little Easter egg for anybody watching or anybody listening, next Tuesday, I know that Scott wrote, I believe, for Champions.
Yep.
When you were how old? Do you remember? Quite young?
The first thing I wrote was for White Wolf magazine. It was called Siege Shire, and it was a little halfling shire gets completely overwhelmed by all the monsters in all the land, and it's kind of a castle survival type thing. And then I think I wrote a couple of things for Adventurers Club, which was the magazine by Hero Games. And Hero Games put out Champions, as well as, what was a fighter game? I forget now. The tabletop fighter game. And then that was what led to the actual start of my writing career, was writing for role-playing games. Yep. And then I was able to write, I can't remember the names of these damn books now.
I know they're Champions
they'll
books, so
pop into my head in a minute. Anybody in the chat room wants to type these in. I wrote for the fighter game. I got to write a couple of, that was a sci-fi game, going back to the earlier question. For the tabletop fighter game, I got to write system books or planetary books. Like, here is this whole organization. You get to create all their fighters. You get to create their government, all their characters. I wrote several of those source books. Sorry, that was what they were called. And that was awesome because I had been writing source books forever for role-playing, was able to bring those to life. And then got to write a few actual modules as well.
Yep, awesome. And if I recall correctly, some of those modules might have early GFL influences in them, but I'm not sure. Moving on, I will say on YouTube, Artificial Selection, hello, my friend, asks, when you think of PCs or NPCs you've played, which one seems the most memorable to you now? Please explain for non-role-playing games.
PCs are a player character. That means there's a human being sitting at the table with you who is playing that character. An NPC is a non-player character. That is a character that the dungeon master, the game master, creates and operates throughout the system. There were so many of them. It was so long ago. The one that sticks with me, I think Rob Otto might have been the game master for this Champions. Lance Coyote, Private Eye. And Lance Coyote had I think he had a bit of a tick where he liked to cripple people. So he would beat up criminals and then cripple them. And then eventually that came back to haunt Lance Coyote because one of the criminals caught up with him and crippled him. But then he got cybernetic legs, and it was great.
But this is an important point to make in this particular discussion because one of the things that we know about, or that I know about you, is you try to assign a character trait to each of your characters so that if that's something that the reader kludges in on and they love that person, they will know. And the thing you always tell me when I ask about it is about Predator. Right, and the guy, there's one of the band of brothers who are trying to take out the Predator, keeps a safety razor with the blades removed, and he continually shaves his beard as a soothing mechanism, and that's like the character trait that you pick up on, and like when he stops doing that, he's not okay.
Yep.
And so that's Lance Coyote seems to have stuck with you. How old were you when Lance Coyote was introduced?
Sorry. Sorry, guys. God, I don't know. Maybe Rob can pitch in. I'm not sure Rob was the game master for that one. But Lance Coyote would have been 15 to 17, somewhere in that ballpark. Here's a question. This isn't exactly germane to the storytelling angle, but it's always a fun one. Here is a somewhat random question. Is it true that D&D in the 80s was seen by some people as satanic? Not only was it true, not only was there a great scare that D&D was going to turn all the kids to cannibalistic Satan worshipers and all this other shit, I and Dr. Daniel Baker, PhD in the house, and co-creator of Slay, Rob Otto, were all on a Satan worshiper watch list in Sheboygan County, Michigan, because we play D&D.
And my brother, my brother played D&D. I did not. In New York, never on a watch list. Not for D&D, I'll say. Anyway.
The Rob pointed out was Silent Death, and the thing I wrote, I wrote 2 for Silent Death, which is a tabletop fighter game. That was the ASP Technocracy, which is, give me a second here, because this actually filtered up into my actual work. The basis for the work I did in that is the League of Planets in the Galactic Football League.
I knew that there was some
You're
similar.
right. Yeah, it's the same. It's basically the same structure, the same concept of a science-based corporation taking over an entire government. And then the other one was the Sigurd Archdiocese, which was so much fucking fun to play. The Sigurd Archdiocese, a Silent Death house book by me, put out by Iron Crown. Yeah, put out by Iron Crown, which Hero Games with Champions. Iron Crown own Silent Death as well. And that was Space Vikings. That's what it was. Space Vikings.
I'm going to bring my own experience in for a minute. As I just mentioned, my brother, Jude, who's in the chat room on Facebook, he played D&D when we were young. And my mother was a little bit worried that he was hanging with the wrong people. So how she solved that problem is she made him sit down with my mom and me and run a small campaign. And it lasted about 30 minutes at best, because he said, you have encountered an orc, you have a quiver of arrows, what do you do? And she said, well, I can't shoot the arrows at the orcs because orcs have thick skin, and an arrow won't pierce an orc's skin. So my question is, as a dungeon master, how significant, if at all, was the physics of the real world, was the physics of Earth?
Well, that's an interesting question. The real world physics factors into D&D in a couple of weird ways. You know, what is your weapon made of? What is your armor made of? And you have these stats to try and represent your physical strength, your dexterity, your speed, all of these other categories. And the goal is to set a baseline, believable, human-like, real-world-like existence, medieval world-like existence, upon which you layer the unreal, upon which you layer magical weapons, superpowers, monsters, and all of these crazy powers, all the way up to and including gods. So where that influenced my work is to begin a story and make sure that when you initiate your world building in a story, you are laying a foundation that looks and feels and smells and sounds and tastes normal to the people reading it. Because the first 5, 6, 7 chapters, while the reader knows they're reading a book for a reason, that's a phrase I use all the time. The reader knows they're reading a book for a reason. They know shit is coming. That is the handshake, that is the bro hug you are making with the reader. Like, I got you, come on in. Trust me, when I get to the crazy shit, it's going to all feel real and you're going to be totally into it. So that normality, that introductory normality, that stage setting, that this is a thing that could happen to you, you might wind up in the same situation, is super important. That increases the enjoyment for the reader or the viewer when you get to the stuff you know would never happen to you.
And if you're a viewer, if it's a movie or if it's a TV show, we call that suspension of disbelief. So that's exactly right. That's a wonderful answer. Suspension
of disbelief begins with belief. You've got to create that compact with your viewer or your reader that you are telling a believable, real story, and then they let you go crazy.
Okay, so Rob, your co-writer for Slay, asks, which is worse, players figuring out the plot too early or not figuring it out at all?
Oh boy, worse. That's a very good question. I think the worst one is definitely them not figuring it out at all. Going back to the kobold with the divorced parents, the latchkey kobold. That them figuring out something else and missing the complete amazing setup that you have placed literally just inside the castle gate to the right that they never get to. Because if you tell them to stop buying cabbage, then it's a giveaway. They know something's up, and then they're like, okay, now they're looking for the next clue instead of following the natural tendencies. Missing something that you've put a lot of work into, that was the hardest thing. But I was an angry young man, and people like Rob figuring out the goddamn plot 10 minutes into a 2-weekend session also made me very angry.
I have a question. I have a question, especially after the last couple of days when you have said with your mouth, with words, that you are very, very manic and very excited. What if they did figure it out too early? Or, I'm sorry, what if they didn't figure it out at all? Did you give them hints? Did you try and help them? Did you try to direct them back? Did you do any of that?
If they're not figuring it out at all, you gotta bring them back, and you gotta give them a clue. And sometimes that clue is subtle. Sometimes you have sort of a player helper in the game. Mm-hmm. So in our case, that was usually Jeff Rappelgee.
Wait, so that's a Confederate.
It's a partial Confederate, because there were, if you played with a group long enough, there is a player in the room that you can give a look to, like a raised eyebrow, like, yeah, I think it's time to stop buying cabbage. And you like, without saying the words, like, I think it's time to stop buying cabbage, Jeff. Can we stop buying cabbage? And then Jeff will be like, oh, you know what, guys, I think it's time to move on.
That's awesome, because that's a Confederate. And we see that a lot in movies and TV shows, which of course you can't do in writing because we are reading a static thing or hearing a static thing. But we see that a lot. There is somebody on the screen that we know to identify with, or we know to follow if we're not following, and that sort of thing. So I love that you had that as in a live action, things could change moment.
In the chat room, Ross the boss says, I want some kobold cabbage. And here we go. See, this is fucking happens all the time. This is what happens. Now, all of a sudden, everybody in the chat room wants some goddamn kobold cabbage. And I'm going to get a fucking email with somebody say, can you write a book about kobold cabbage? Like, no!
I'll make a kobold cabbage and kielbasa recipe.
Stop asking for kobold cabbage. Jeff, can you just get them through the goddamn gate?
I have another question from Dan Baker. He says, you have talked at length about influential authors early on. What contemporary authors do you take inspiration from now? And do you know if they play D&D?
I'm the one of the people I take inspiration from now is Joe Abercrombie. I'm a huge Joe Abercrombie fan. I think I've read everything he has put out. And there's no way in hell that guy didn't play D&D. He probably still plays D&D like 3 times a week. If nobody's around, I'm sure he's playing D&D. So his style, his emotional content and gritty approach and the real world foundation of everything, it smells so much like my own writing to me, even though I don't do the medieval thing very often. So I'd say Joe Abercrombie is really the biggest one I follow now. And it's for weird things too. It's like, it's characterization, and it's also the way he puts things down on a page. Mm-hmm. Joe Abercrombie has been an influence on me. I have very short paragraphs, a lot of returns, a lot of line breaks, single lines of dialogue. Joe's the opposite. Joe will pack 18 lines, 4 actions into 1 paragraph. And you're like, listening to an audiobook sounds flawless. Looking at it on a page, you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Interesting.
But that's a stylistic thing. So that has helped me change a few things in my style.
So David Lamb in the Facebook chat room asks, was there ever an event/encounter/storyline from D&D or other RPGs that worked so well that you later took that event and recreated it in your story writing, your novel writing?
Specific events, specific storylines, I would say probably. I probably did that, but nothing that I can think of exactly. I still have the opposite of writer's block, which is writer's floodgates are always open. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to get through one day without 4 or 5 new story ideas. And wanting, like, babe, it's only going to take 15 minutes. It'll take 15 minutes. I'm just going to write this down. Next thing you know, the whole day is gone. And I got publishers calling me like, where the fuck is their story, bro? So, I'm never in a situation where I consciously reuse a device or plot line. I probably do, but never on purpose.
I will say that when I asked that question in the chat room on Facebook, your co-writer Rob Otto said, Marie's Children, ?
Marie's Children, Nocturnals. Yeah, that was, shit. Rob, help me out. What is that? Marie's Children is from, Rob also said, Scott takes inspiration from the author Rob freaking Otto, which is a very good point.
It's true.
So Nocturnals was based on, I just can't place it. It's been so long ago. You guys can help me out. Marie's Children is based on one of the stories I wrote that either they played or I may have actually written a book for it.
So I will ask on Twitch, Preposterous Hippopotamus asks, writing slices, is this style natural to you, or I guess Slay, is this style natural to you, or do you struggle to keep it fantasy / tending towards your traditional technical science sci-fi style?
Okay. So for those of you listening at home who have not tuned in to Slay is a urban fantasy series that's very gritty and vulgar. We call it Buffy meets the Mandalorian meets Letterkenny or The Boys, somewhere in that ballpark. This style of actually using more open-ended magic where things aren't locked down by physics and various subtle exceptions to physics it's a mixed bag. So this Slay reads very much like one of our Champions adventures back in the day with me and Rob and Dan and Scott Christian and Jeff Rabelgie and Bob Gillen and Kirk Klein and the whole gang, where this is by and large a superhero story. The very low level, street level superhero, like Daredevil level superheroes. So this is not something I've written for a very long time. It's a more loose, open-ended plot structure. It's an outline. It's more character-driven, which is what some of the magical powers allow me to do. And I don't have to spend as much time on Wikipedia and talking to physics PhDs and doctors and
people who know
biology
spelunking and people who know radio frequencies and physicists. And
this allows me to not spend half of my time talking to experts and brushing up on stuff that getting to the level of knowledge I need to convey that the characters know it too. So this is much more role-playing based for sure. I've actually come up with character classes, all kinds of character classes for Slay. They're on the Siglerpedia. So if I'm answering the question right, this is much closer to that style of storytelling than the stuff I usually write.
Terrific. So I do think that we have kept you guys long enough. So we will be back next week with another episode of Slay and another episode of Deep Cuts.
Deep Cuts, yeah.
But
Deep
what shall we talk about next week? If you guys have any ideas, if there's things you want to know. Spike, I know you mentioned a question where on Facebook you joined and you asked about his writing. I forget what the question was, but we may choose that, how he started writing, what the origins of that writing were. But if you guys have things that you would like us to talk about in this sort of in-depth, free-flowing conversation that involves you guys, I'd love to do that. So we need to hear from you guys now. We do actually need to.
Ross just wants more D&D. And probably more latchkey kobold cabbage. That's probably what he was after. Hey, Gary Lindros in the house. What's going on, man?
Hey, Gary Lindros.
Yeah, so let's take a few minutes here. Got all your questions? We didn't get to all your questions. There was a very popular topic. We may revisit this again in the future. What other topic might you like to hear us chat about next week? I'm not ruling out a D&D part 2. We might go through this and get the questions.
Totally do that. Brian, I saw that you said thanks, but can you remind me what you said, because I can't scroll that far back.
Yeah, just repeat the things in the chat room. There's Rob Otto just posted that Shadows City Champions. Oh boy, I forgot
he was talking about Nocturnal, and he was talking about Shadows, whatever.
Shadows of the City.
Yeah.
That was so friggin' fun. Shadows of the City, which I can't call up on the screen right now. Maybe we do another one next week, and I talk about the books I actually wrote in the role playing.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. And so listen, you guys, this is a brand new drop in the feed. This is a brand new series for us. So if you have things you would love us to talk about, we talked about AI last week. We're going to talk about D&D tonight and next week. If you have things you want us to talk about, if you are, thank you, Maya. Thank you, D79. Just email us at info@emptyset.com and we will do that for you. And if not, you can always, when the Deep Cuts episode starts on Wednesdays, you can immediately drop in a new topic. Just say new topic, whatever, and we might add that to the future to talk about after the episode.
Yeah, so next episode 3 of Deep Cuts, we will continue on with a discussion of how role-playing games D&D influences my storytelling style and my storytelling career. We will focus on the books that I actually wrote for all of these games and talk about the process that went into those, my enjoyment level for those, and see if those actual printed books, which launched my career, had any kind of lasting impact on what I do now.
And thank you, Spike. Brian asked how and when Scott became a real author, when he thought he was definitely going to be an author for his career. So that is something that we will add to the list as well. So I think now we have kept you long enough. We are going to let you guys go. Do we have a close out to the Deep Cuts episode?
Yes, we will be back on Wednesday, May 20. This is Wednesday, May 29th, isn't it? It June? We'll be back on Wednesday, June 5th for the Scott Sigler Slices live read, Slay episode 63, Ransom. It's we're getting into the nitty gritty of Slay season 2, including 63. There should be 7 episodes left. So you will not want, if you've been following along live, you will not want to miss this. Those of you listening at home, we can get you clued in as well.
Yep. And Deep Slices 3 will also follow on that episode on that day.
So that is it for all of us. I'm going to do a little break here.
Okay.
And you're going to have to, A gets to edit these after the fact. So you might want to jot this down because we're going to cut out all that stuff about that non-evergreen stuff about what's coming up next week.
Okay.
We'll fix that next time. That is it for episode number 2 of Deep Cuts. Tune in for episode number 3, where we will talk about the role-playing game books and stories that I published that helped launch the career of this mellifluous voice you are listening to now. Say goodbye, eh?
Goodbye, eh?
Goodbye, everybody.
We love you guys.
And now I'll hit stop record. As you guys can see, we're still figuring this one out. It's totally freeform. That's it for us. We will catch you guys next week. It sounds like y'all had a lot of fun. We really enjoyed the shit out of this. Emails at the bottom of the screen, info@emptyset. If you come up with topics you would like to hear us talk about for Deep Cuts, email them. We might get to them. Hopefully we will. Anything else, babe?
I don't know. Can we? Yeah. No, nothing else.
You want to go back?
I just want to make sure we get all these suggestions before we can't. Like artificial selections. Can you copy that and to the desktop?
Yeah, I think I can do it. Okay, guys. Now this may be loud. We've tried to do this for it. The only way to do this is to take screenshots. So we are done with the show now. You can hang out and listen to us blab, or you can go on about your business. Point to what you want, sweets. This one?
Yes. And then I want you to scroll up. And then scroll up.
Mm-hmm.
That one. This
what
one.
is your favorite campaign?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's fun, but let's do it.
I know that one. Wait, that's a good one, Jen, because that influenced D&D campaign did influence my sci-fi writing. So we'll talk about that's exciting.
Keep going down.
Okay.
Keep going down. Here, now, this one, AI. I love that. I love that.
That's
AI,
AL.
Yep. Yeah. AL. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. Mex. Let's do Mex from Sean Dyer. Does Sean Dyer run? Let's just copy them all. This one.
Okay.
Scroll
Jeez,
down.
you guys were busy.
I know. I don't want to miss it. And I think we might be done. Yep,
Probably.
I think we might be done.
All
I
right.
just didn't want to miss them. You guys are awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll get smoother at this. This was only our 2nd episode, and we love you.
But as you can see, we've been doing this for 4 years, and the primary show is not all that smooth
Ross
yet.
the boss.
So keep your fingers crossed.
No, I can. We can copy that, and we'll talk about that next week when
I'll
we're
just
talking about
screenshot
D&D.
it. Screenshot it too.
That's what I meant.
Oops, see that moved. All right, you guys, that is it. We are going to get out of here. You're fantastic, and you all smell an awful lot like flowers. You may all kiss off into. Wait, I gotta switch camera. You may all kiss up into the sky. Huh?